35.5 million. It's an absolutely massive number, right? Well, just picture this. That number represents the square kilometer footprint once entirely controlled by a single nation. A nation that started on a small island in Europe and just kept expanding across the continents. To put that into perspective, this mind-boggling geographical footprint is roughly equivalent to a quarter of all the landmass on planet Earth.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tracking the complete life cycle of one of the most sprawling powers in human history. Our focus today is الإمبراطورية البريطانية القصة الكاملة للدولة التي لا تغيب عنها الشمس, or the complete story of the empire on which the sun never sets. We're going to take you on a visual journey, tracking everything from its very early expansion all the way to its modern-day rebirth.
Okay, let's dive into this. To help us easily digest over 400 years of history, we've broken our roadmap down into 5 key parts. Dawn of the empire on which the sun never sets, the Pax Britannica era, the beginning of the fall, and finally, the Commonwealth.
Section 1. Dawn of the Empire. This initial global expansion definitely wasn't an accident. It was actually sparked by strict economic policies and maritime exploration under Tudor monarchs like Henry VIII and Elizabeth I.
It's really fascinating to see how the tools for this expansion evolved over time. Take the British East India Company, for example. It started out purely as a commercial trading entity looking for spices and textiles. But eventually, driven by intense European competition, it completely transformed into a hybrid military and sovereign power. In 1757, the company militarily seized Bengal, and by 1765, they actually secured the right to collect taxes directly from the Mughal emperor. Suddenly, you have a trading company with its own private army running vast territories, completely paving the way for British control over eastern trade routes. Moving right along to Section 2, the empire on which the sun never sets. You might think losing the 13 American colonies in 1783 would slow them down, but it really didn't. It just powerfully shifted their focus toward dominating Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. To really wrap our heads around the sheer human scale of this new expansion, look at this number, 412 million. By 1913, that was the total population living under the British Empire. To put that into perspective, that was roughly 23% of the entire world's population at the time. Literally, 1 in 5 people on Earth lived under the British Crown. And the mind-blowing numbers just keep coming. By 1920, at its absolute geographical peak, the empire covered 24% of the Earth's total land area. We're talking about a footprint over 150 times larger than Great Britain itself. And this is exactly where that famous phrase comes from, the empire on which the sun never sets. This wasn't just some poetic metaphor or an act of vanity, it was a literal geographic reality. Because its territories, colonies, and trading posts spanned nearly every continent, the sun was literally always shining on at least one piece of British-administered land. Section 3. The Pax Britannica era, or the British Peace. Spanning a full century from 1815 to 1914, this was a period where Britain essentially played global policeman with virtually no serious international rivals. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how a tiny island pulled this off. It basically boiled down to 2 massive pillars: the Royal Navy, which completely dominated the world's oceans and trade routes, and the globally spanning Red Line telegraph network. By 1902, the empire was completely wired together, allowing for unprecedentedly fast communication, logistics, and military control. So, what were the pillars that actually supported this century of peace? Well, first, getting the military threat of Napoleonic France out of the picture in 1815. Then, you have the unmatched production power of the Industrial Revolution. This created a massive demand for new markets and raw materials, which fueled aggressive free trade policies after 1840. Add to that strategic diplomacy to keep power balanced in Europe, and of course that unquestioned naval sovereignty protecting the trade routes. Now for Section 4, the beginning of the fall. As we roll into the 20th century, with powers like America and Germany on the rise, the devastating human and economic tolls of the world wars became the catalyst for a rapid decline. This timeline shows just how rapidly things unraveled. Between 1939 and 1945, World War II severely drained British resources. By 1947, they lost the jewel in the imperial crown, with India gaining independence. Then came the Suez Crisis in 1956. This is widely considered the last failed attempt to project traditional colonial power by force, and it ended in a pretty humiliating withdrawal under international pressure. What's really interesting here is looking at the strategies used during decolonization. Historical sources highlight a pretty stark contrast. While the French fought violently to retain their colonies, the British took a surprisingly pragmatic approach. They assessed their colonies, realized many had become heavy economic burdens, and began a gradual withdrawal. This was also heavily driven by pressure from the United States, who wanted to end colonialism to stop the spread of communist influence during the Cold War. Which brings us to our final section, the Empire's legacy, the Commonwealth. When the era of colonialism finally faded, the empire essentially adapted to survive its own demise, transforming into the Commonwealth of Nations as a union of equals. To understand why newly independent nations actually agreed to stay in this group, let's listen to the words of India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru in 1949. Even after India became a republic, he said, "It is better to keep a cooperative association going which may do good in this world rather than break it." This huge diplomatic shift established a completely new foundation built on free choice rather than dependency. And that shows exactly why this matters today. Look at the modern Commonwealth. It now has 56 independent member states with a massive combined population of 2.5 billion people. This isn't just some old colonial club. It's a modern geopolitical network connected by the English language and shared democratic and legal values. The craziest part? It's become so appealing that countries like Rwanda, Togo, and Gabon recently joined, despite having absolutely no history of British colonial rule. So we've just tracked the incredible journey of a small island nation that literally redrew the map of the world and then completely reinvented itself as a voluntary global network when the age of empires died. But with geopolitical power constantly shifting today, it leaves us with one big question. How will the Commonwealth adapt to the future? Will it remain an influential soft power, or is history going to write a brand new chapter? Let us know what you think, and thanks for joining us on this explainer.